I just stumbled upon a Wall Street database and nearly did a double take. Why? Because I found 9 XRP ETFs quietly sitting there, ready to launch, and one looming date that could change everything for XRP. So there I was, right? Late at night, digging through crypto news like I always do, when I uncovered something that blew my mind. If you're an XRP holder like me, then picture this. Right, all those rumors around an XRP exchange-traded fund or ETF, well, they're not just rumors anymore. They are real. They're listed on the DTCC platform, and they might actually be going live as early as this month. Now, today, I'm going to be taking you on a personal journey through how I discovered these secret XRP ETFs and what they could mean for the future of our favorite crypto. And trust me here, you're going to want to stick around because I'm also going to share how I'm gearing up for this next chapter, from getting my exchange game in place to experimenting with a new crypto project called Unity Nodes. There's a lot to kind of unravel here, so by the end of this story, you're going to see why November 13th, 2025 could go down as one of the most important days in XRP's history. Let me set the stage. A few days ago, the crypto world saw something pretty wild. Out of nowhere, a spot Litecoin ETF launched, the first ever in the United States for Litecoin. On the same day, we got spot Solana ETFs from Bitwise, and even Grayscale jumped in with their own Solana fund. Now, I remember seeing those headlines and thinking, just wait a second. If regulators are green-lighting Solana and Litecoin ETFs, then what about XRP? I mean, after all, XRP is one of the largest cryptocurrencies and has been one of the most passionate, or has got one of the most passionate communities out there. So my curiosity, of course, went through the roof. Now, I started sniffing around for any clues about an XRP ETF, and that's when I went down a rabbit hole to the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, the DTCC, that website, and which is basically where all of the Wall Street kind of clears and settles their trades. And what I discovered made my eyes widen. I found a literal list of ticker symbols and fund names, and a bunch of them said XRP. Now, I'm talking about things like 21 Shares Core XRP Trust, TOXR. You had ProShares Ultra XRP, that was UXRP. You had Bitwise XRP ETF, the ticker, XRP, love that one. And then you had Canary XRP ETF, XRPC, and more. So in total, there were 9 XRP ETFs listed on the DTCC platform. 9. Now, I had to double check that I wasn't on some kind of fake website or seeing an old snapshot. But no, it was real, and growing lineup was right there in an official database. Seeing this made me realize that it's not just talk anymore. The groundwork is basically being done behind the scenes. Now, if you're not familiar with how ETFs work, here is the scoop. When a fund shows up on the DTCC site, it means that all of the early registration and setup is done. The issuers and their partners have essentially prepared everything for launch. They're just waiting on the final regulatory approval. So, to be clear, a DTCC listing does not mean that they're going to be trading just yet. It's like having rockets on the launch pad. They're fueled up and ready to go, but they're waiting on mission control. In this case, that's the SEC. Just to hit that green light. So, as I skimmed through those 9 XRP ETF entries, I noticed something else. They weren't all the same. Some of these funds are future-based ETFs, and others are spot-based ETFs. Now, what's the difference? Well, in simple terms, a futures ETF, it tracks the price of XRP through futures contracts, basically financial bets on what XRP's price will be. Those funds don't actually hold real XRP. Instead, they just hold contracts that mirror XRP's price movement. In fact, a few of the tickers that I saw, like UXRP and XRPI, XRPT, and XXRP, even offered leveraged exposure. Some aim for double the daily price move of XRP, for the adrenaline junkies that are out there. On the other hand, spot ETFs are ones, at least the ones that many of us are actually really excited about, because a spot XRP ETF would actually hold XRP in custody. Its goal is to directly mirror the token's price by literally owning XRP on our behalf. Now, in that DTCC list, tickers like the TOXR, XRP, that's Bitwise Fund, XRPC, XRPL, and XRPR were labeled as spot-based. Now, that means that those funds plan to buy and hold XRP. So if they launch, they're going to need to scoop up a ton of XRP from the market to back up their shares. Just think about the potential demand that could create for XRP. Here is another really crazy part, right? Some of those ETFs are already live as we kind of speak. Now, as least the future ones are, or the futures are, right? Because the ProShares Ultra XRP, the UXRP, for example, and a couple of those 2x leverage products like XXRP and XRPT have reportedly already started trading. They launched not that long ago, quietly offering traders a way to bet on XRP's price without actually buying XRP directly. Even the Rex Osprey XRP ETF, XRPR, is live. That one is a bit of a unique unicorn, if you will, because it's a hybrid fund. Around 80% is backed by real XRP, but structured under older rules, at least fund rules, right? And it went live back in September. And get this, in just a few weeks after its launch, that XRPR fund attracted over $100 million in assets. And I'm not even kidding. It pulled in 9 figures worth of investment. That shows you, or just shows you how much pent-up demand there actually is. Big players are ready to throw money into XRP exposure. In fact, Bitwise chief investment officer even predicted that once these ETFs get rolling, they could attract billions of dollars within months. Just imagine that. Billions of new dollars potentially flowing into XRP. Now, of course, not all 9 ETFs have launched yet. The ones that plan to hold real XRP, the pure spot ETFs, are still on standby, waiting the green light from the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. And here is why. The SEC has been taking its sweet time, partly due to some curveballs like government shutdowns. Right? Remember the US government shutdown on October 1st, right? Yeah. That little fiasco froze more than 16 different crypto ETF applications, including those for XRP, Solana, Dogecoin, Cardano, you name it. Basically, when the government ground to a halt, so did the SEC's review process. Talk about bad timing. It was like hitting pause on a movie right at the climax. But don't worry, right? The story doesn't end there. Once the government got its act together and reopened, things started moving fast, almost like they were making up for lost time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, right, by late October, we witnessed a bit of a breakthrough. Canary Capital had launched the first United States spot Litecoin ETFs, and Bitwise launched a spot Solana ETF, ticker BSOL, under some new streamlined listing rules. Even Grayscale jumped in, launching their Solana ETF GSOL the very next day. Suddenly, all eyes turned to XRP, because if Litecoin and Solana could get ETFs, then you bet XRP was going to be in the conversation. And sure enough, right, the bombshell dropped. Eleanor, a journalist who stays on top of all this stuff, revealed a major move by Canary Capital regarding their pending XRP ETF. Canary basically went and removed a very special delaying amendment from its filing. Now, let me explain how huge that is. Because normally, when an ETF is filed, there's this clause, the delaying amendment, that keeps the SEC in control of the timeline. It prevents the filing from automatically going effective. Now, by removing that clause, Canary essentially just hit the start button on an automatic countdown for their spot XRP ETF. Under the US securities laws, once you do that, the filing will become effective after 20 days unless the SEC intervenes. So, 20 days from the day that they pulled the delay, which was October 24th. That lands us on November 13th, 2025. You can mark that calendar, or that date on your calendar if you want. Now, it means that if all goes as planned, November 13th could be the day the first US spot XRP ETF goes live. People in the XRP community, myself included, are buzzing about this. One crypto analyst even said that November 13th might become the most important date for XRP holders in recent memory. Let's think about that. Right? We've had some pretty big days, right? The end of the SEC lawsuit earlier this year was pretty massive. Remember that pump when the case was settled? XRP's price jumped over 10% immediately after the SEC dropped its fight against Ripple. Now we're looking at a new kind of catalyst. Now, if an XRP ETF or multiple ETFs do launch, it opens the floodgates for a whole ton of investors who could not or would not buy XRP directly. It provides institutional players a regulated way to get exposure to XRP, which is exactly what many of them have been waiting for. There's no more worrying about self-custody or unfamiliar crypto exchanges. They can just buy an ETF in their regular brokerage account. Now, this is kind of the point where you're thinking, okay, this sounds exciting, maybe even a little bit hyped. Is this actually happening? What is the catch? Well, these are some perfect questions, and believe me, I asked them too. First, it's not a done deal until it's, well, done. November 13th is just the automatic date. There are still a couple of hoops to jump through. Right, the ETF could still need Nasdaq to approve the listing of the fund's shares. Usually a formality, but hey, it is still a factor that we have to think about. And the SEC, even though the clock is ticking, could always throw in a wrench in the works at the last minute if they suddenly have any concerns. Now, there are also, at least I should note that if the SEC is actually fully back to work after the shutdown, they might use that window to issue comments or delays. So yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also realistic. Nothing is guaranteed until we see the first trade go through. Now, let's talk about the second question. What happens if it does actually go through? If Canary's XRP ETF launches, well, it's going to be a bit of a race. In fact, the very next day after Canary made their move, we saw Fidelity, yes, Fidelity, the Wall Street giant, and Canary both filing final paperwork for other crypto ETFs. It looks like multiple issuers are all eyeing up the same November window. But the way that it's all lined up right now, we could see a whole batch of spot XRP ETFs launching around the same time. As if once one goes, well, a whole bunch of them will go. And it's not like it's just XRP here either, right? The filings hint that spot ETFs for other altcoins, things like Dogecoin, Cardano, Avalanche, they may follow before the end of November too. In other words, we might be entering a new era. The altcoin season's done, but maybe we're entering the ETF season now, where many top cryptos get their own ETFs in the United States, one after the other. For XRP specifically, right, this moment, it feels huge. Right? I've been in the XRP community long enough to remember when the idea of a US XRP ETF felt like a distant dream. Back when, the SEC was suing Ripple, who would have thought that institutional funds would be lining up for XRP? But here we are, 9 XRP funds prepped on the DTCC, and major firms like WisdomTree, 21 Shares, CoinShares, Grayscale, and even Franklin Templeton are waiting in the wings with their own applications. It's a complete 180-degree turn. XRP is not just surviving regulatory scrutiny, it's actually potentially thriving in a regulated arena. Now, Wall Street is basically saying, hey, there's big money interest here, and we want in on the action. Even if you're the most die-hard XRP fan, you have to admit, right, that's validation on a whole nother level. Now, before we start fantasizing about rocket ships and moon parties, let me just hit pause here for a second and drop a reality check. Now, this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, so I'm glad that we got that out of the way. I know, that disclaimer is longer than a grocery list, right? But it is rather important. Now, this is exciting news, but it's not a promise of overnight riches. Could XRP's price pump if one or more ETFs launch? Possibly. Some analysts are saying that it could be a major catalyst. Like I mentioned, right, we saw double-digit surges when the lawsuit news hit. And logically, if XRP's ETFs start buying up XRP or their reserves, well, that's new demand in the market. But remember that markets can be unpredictable. Right? We could also see a buy the rumor, sell the news scenario like we did with Bitcoin, where traders take profits once the launch actually happens. So my approach is be optimistic, but stay level-headed and prepared. And speaking of being prepared, let me share what I'm doing on a personal level to get ready for whatever happens next. Now, one thing that I've learned over the years in crypto is to never put all of your eggs in one basket, especially when it comes to exchanges. So if an ETF launch triggers a surge in trading volume or volatility, some exchanges could experience outages or even withdrawal freezes. It's happened before during big moves. Now, the last place you want to be is stuck, unable to access your funds or execute a trade. So when timing really does matter. That is why I've made it a point now to set up accounts on multiple different exchanges, basically having plan A, plan B, plan C, and so on. For example, I use platforms like Binance, Coinbase, KuCoin, Kraken, Blowfin, BitGet, LBank, many others, right? Quite regularly. And those are part of my rotation. And yes, there are affiliate partners listed on my website. And if you do use those links, it does support the channel here. It costs you nothing extra too. So a big thank you for anyone who does want to know what exchanges I personally use and heads over to the website and uses those links. It's really appreciated here. Anyway, importantly, I've got them all KYC'd verified and I've tested them all. So I know that I can actually rely on them when it's needed. So the links are on all of the exchanges that I personally use are on my website, which is linked in the description down below. My philosophy is that you never know when you're going to need quick access to an exchange. Sometimes one goes down or suspends withdrawals unexpectedly, and you need a backup ready. Well, when the crypto market gets crazy, I sleep better knowing that I have multiple doors to exit or even enter trades. On the topic of exchanges, I have to mention something that I'm pretty excited about. I've partnered up with Kraken to bring you a special offer. Kraken is one of the big, reputable crypto exchanges. Many of you guys have probably got an account there already, but if not, you should probably listen up. Now, for a limited time, new users who sign up with my referral link, you can find that on my website or in the description down below, and trade at least $100 worth of any crypto, excluding stablecoins, within 30 days, where you're going to get $25 worth of XRP credited to your account as a bonus. Yes, $25 in XRP, free. Basically Kraken's way of saying welcome. Now, it's a sweet deal because not only do you get some extra XRP to hodl onto, but you also end up with another exchange account set up and ready to go. Like I said, right, having another exchange in your arsenal, especially one as reliable as Kraken, is a pretty smart move before things get wild in a bull market. Now, this promo is a kind of win-win-win situation, right? You support the channel here a little bit through that affiliate link. It costs you nothing extra. You also get to snag some free XRP for yourselves, and Kraken, they get a new user. Talk about win-win-win. Now, if you're interested, the link and the details, the terms and conditions and all of that jazz are on my website and also linked in a description down below. So just remember to double check all of the terms. For example, you need to make a $100 trade within 30 days of signing up, and not all jurisdictions are eligible. So make sure you do qualify before making any trades if you want to. And of course, make sure you qualify for that 25 XRP reward. Now, let's go ahead and pivot to something slightly different because it's also a part of my crypto journey. Now, something more on the kind of community and passive income side of things. Now, if you've been following my channel, then you might actually recall that I've talked about Unity nodes in several different videos already. It's not the headline for today, of course, but it's definitely an interesting project that I've been involved with. Now, it ties into this whole narrative of trying to accumulate crypto and stay ahead of the curve. So let me just share a little bit more of that story. During my research and constant hunt for crypto opportunities, I came across Unity nodes, and it caught my attention as a way to potentially earn crypto passively, kind of like mining or staking, but with a bit of a twist. The idea is that you run a network of devices, think like smartphones, tablets, that perform tasks on the Unity network, and in return, you earn crypto rewards. Now, it's intrigued me enough that I did decide to jump in and test it for myself. I went ahead and purchased a Unity Master Node NFT, which basically gives me control of 200 licenses within their network. Now, you can think of each license as a slot for one device, like a phone, for example. That can give you, at least the network under my node, a bit of an umbrella. Anyway, the Unity app, it hasn't gone live just yet, but they are planning to roll it out real soon. But I'm gearing up for that when it does go live. Now, my plan is to start off small, run a pilot with 10 phones initially. I'm going to connect those to my master node and see how it goes for a few weeks. If things run smoothly and the rewards are as kind of advertised, then I will probably scale up to use more of those 200 slots. So What kind of rewards, you might ask? Well, this is the cool part because Unity actually lets me choose to be paid in various different cryptocurrencies. Now, I'm choosing to receive my rewards in a mix of BTC, ETH, ADA, XRP, right? Some of my favorites. Now, to me, it's a great way to accumulate more of these coins on the side, almost like staking them by contributing to this network. Now, it's not like the crazy profits of a bull market or anything like that. Let's manage the expectations, but it is a neat little passive income and could grow over time. So picture earning a little drip of Bitcoin, ETH, Cardano, and XRP regularly, right? Just for having some devices doing their own thing. If this works as advertised, it could be a nice little supplement to the long-term investment strategy. Now, I know that not everyone is ready to jump in and buy a masternode NFT for themselves, right? Maybe you don't want to run 200 devices. It's a lot of commitment to manage. That's why I have a plan to make Unity more accessible for our community. Now, I actually purchased a second and third Unity node, and my idea is to lease out those licenses to people who are curious about Unity but don't want to buy an entire node for themselves. Basically, you could just rent one or a few of my licenses, run a couple of devices, and earn your share of crypto without actually any of the big upfront costs or having to worry about 200 licenses. It's a way to dip your toes into Unity without going all in. Now, I'll have more information on how all of this works down in our free Discord server, linked in the description, by the way. And if you are interested, definitely hop into the Discord. It is a free educational community where a lot of us are sharing ideas, and I'll be posting updates there about my Unity pilot and how it was all going, as well as details for anyone who might actually want to try leasing a license from my extra node. Now, as always, you should do your own research on all of this stuff. Unity nodes at least is a fairly new concept, and while I'm excited and optimistic about it, otherwise, I wouldn't be testing it. But I'm also keeping my expectations realistic and my eyes wide open here. The project has a light paper and a rewards calculator available, which I encourage you all to read through if the idea of earning passive crypto from your old devices sounds interesting. Now, the concept might not be new to some of the OG viewers, since I've talked about it many times before, but it is about to move from concept to reality for me once that app does launch, and I can't wait to see how it all plays out. Bringing it all back to the bigger picture then, because I know that we've covered a lot of ground here today. What's the key takeaway from all of this? Well, honestly, it feels like we're standing at a crossroads for XRP and crypto in general. On one side, you have the top-down institutional adoption that is happening here. Wall Street titans and major funds are gearing up to offer XRP to their clients through ETFs and trusts. This is the kind of stuff that lends credibility and opens floodgates of capital. I mean, a year or two ago, who would have thought that names like BlackRock or Fidelity would have even mentioned, in the same name or sentence as XRP, right? Now, of course, we have Fidelity in the mix for crypto ETFs and companies like Franklin Templeton also wanting a piece of the XRP pie. It's surreal and it's quite exciting. On the other side, we have the bottom-up grassroots innovation that is happening, projects like Unity nodes that empower individual crypto enthusiasts to contribute to networks and earn rewards. Now, the fact that I, just a regular guy with some old phones and a node and an NFT, can participate in something like that, potentially earning me Bitcoin or XRP on the side, is rather incredible. It shows that while big institutions are embracing crypto, regular people like us are finding new ways to get involved and benefit from it too. Now, this is kind of like simultaneous growth from both ends, right? And it's kind of what mainstream adoption is all about, at least in my opinion. As for us XRP holders, this moment is a little bit of validation, right? We always believed XRP had a real use case and real value, despite what all the haters and the FUD during the lawsuit days were saying. Right? Seeing the first US XRP ETF on the cusp of launching just reinforces that belief that XRP is here to stay. It's not some fringe token. It's literally becoming a part of the same financial fabric as ETFs for gold, oil, and the S&P 500, and so on, of course. Now, I have to say, researching this and, living through it has felt like being on a bit of a roller coaster. The slow climb, the waiting through all of the legal battles and delays, and now the thrilling drop, right, where everything starts happening all at once, right? We're almost at that key moment. Will November 13th, 2025 be the day that XRP finally gets its Wall Street debut? If it is, then you can bet that I'm going to be here to break it all down and share that experience with all of you guys. If it is not, well, the story is not over. It just means that there's a little bit more patience that's required. Either way, of course, I'm going to be grateful to be on this journey with all of you guys, right? We're not just watching history here. We're kind of being a part of it in a rather weird way, as a community, as early adopters, and as people who didn't just give up on a token that a lot of the establishment once wrote off. So, whether you're as pumped as I am about the ETFs, or more interested in the passive income stuff like Unity, or just here for the thrill of the crypto ride, I want to say thank you for hanging out with me today and, on this ride anyway. And I hope that you found this story as fascinating as I did. Now, if you want to join me on this XRP journey and catch all of these twists and say kind of happen, then make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel and stick around, because the next chapters of this crypto venture are only really just getting more exciting. And I don't want you to be missing a single thing. So stay tuned, and I'll catch you all in the next one.